Hello, welcome everybody. How are you doing today? How are you doing today? All right, that's okay. We'll get it a little better here hopefully at the end. Thank you for coming to our session. As you can see, this is the Managing vSphere 6.0 Deployments and Upgrades Part 2. So for those of you that haven't seen Part 1 is based specifically around vCenter, and we'll be basing ourselves on everything after that. I'm Brian Graff, and I work for VMware Technical Marketing, and I'll pass it on over here and let Salil introduce himself.
Good afternoon, guys. Thank you for showing up. I know it's an afternoon session, and I'm glad so many of you still showed up. My name is Salil Suri. I work in the vSphere product management team and been at VMware almost about 10 years. I was in the ESXi team, and when they stopped accepting my code, I joined the dark side. And I'm glad to have the chance to actually talk to you guys about some of the great work that we do on the vSphere upgrade side. So with that, let's just jump right into it. This is the standard disclaimer. You have probably seen this a gazillion times before, but it essentially says that I can lie to you at any point of the time during this session and get away with it. I think we already did this. And this is the brief look at the agenda. And we are going to be covering vSphere upgrades from a holistic overview. We'll go deeper into each of these sections, and then we're going to talk about what's coming out in the next future releases. So VMware released vSphere 6 in March of this year, and then we also did an update 1 recently. Before I go any further, can I get a show of hands for people who are running vSphere 6? Wow. Awesome.
That's great.
How many are on 5.5? 5.1? 5.0?
Don't answer. Just kidding.
4.0. Anybody running 4.0?
1.
Okay. Well, this is a lot better than the last time, because last time we asked that question, there were still a lot of people running 4.0, so I'm glad. And so I think vSphere 6 has been getting a lot of good reception. Obviously, we are very proud of what we have put out there, a lot of good features, and a lot of stability and performance that sort of comes with a major release like for vSphere. But with that said, another important date is sort of fast approaching, right? And this is for next year. Can somebody tell me what that date is? It is the end of general support for 5.0 and 5.1. So next year, we will be, these will go out of support. And this, every time I have these conversations with customers, particularly for those of you who are still running 5.0 and 5.1, it often leads to conversations like this. And we need to sort of plan my upgrade, and we need to sort of do it in a compressed time. And by the time we finish upgrading our inventory, it's time to go at it again. And it seems like a never-ending cycle, and people just want to sort of break out of that. And we're going to talk a little bit about what we have done, and we're going to talk about how to sort of plan for this a little bit better. For most customers that I talk to, either during my regular conversations with them, and generally when they're planning out their major data center refresh and planning out the rollout for a major release, this is more or less where we end up, right? Which is that the process is very time consuming. It's complex. There are many pieces to sort of think about as you sort of plan your ESX and vSphere upgrade in general. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. But our goal is, by the end of this presentation, you should feel really like that cat on the unicorn. And feel really cool about vSphere upgrade and feel confident, and that's the key. So in terms of vSphere upgrade overview, it is sort of important to think about it in a holistic sense, right? It's not just about these parts. There is a definite order. There is a set of interdependencies. It is important to know that these things are sort of proceed in a particular way. You can go through these stages independently. You can stage them. You can recover, after each stage using backup that you did take. There is no compulsion that you need to go through all of these stages all at once. And like Brian said, upgrading vCenter was the first part of the session, and I think the session has already ended. But you can look up at the recording. There is a call out for the session number, and I think it was very well received as well. And then we're going to focus on phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4. And we're going to talk a little bit about what you can do to sort of improve the time it takes you to sort of get through these phases and what are some of the best practices. And before I sort of jump right into the next section, one other thing that you should definitely, I keep repeating it to customers and people don't sometimes ignore that piece, is definitely read the documentation, definitely consult what's out there on the hardware compatibility guide. Don't assume because the hardware was working the last time, it's going to work again. We try very, very hard that the ESX support cycle is long, the hardware support cycle is also very, very long, but I do every now and then see customers who upgrade their boxes and end up in a very bad state because they did not check the hardware compatibility. So do spend some time checking that, do read the release notes.
Cool.
So,
yeah.
Go ahead.
So as you start looking at your deployments, right, it's more than just upgrading vCenter. It's more than just upgrading ESX, right? We have to look at this from a holistic view. Maybe our role or your role in your company is only to do a portion of that, but to be successful, you need to be able to have a smooth handoff with others. So as we're looking at this, I want to step back and do a more of a holistic view, right? As we do this, there's some considerations that you need to take. How many hosts are there, right? How long is this going to take? Well, it's going to be dependent on how many hosts you have in your environment. If you only have a few hosts, maybe this is something you can do in one maintenance window. If you have a lot of hosts, maybe it's something that takes 6 months or 12 months or 18 months. You know, so keeping that in mind, how sensitive are you to downtime? Okay, some people are more sensitive than others.
You want to take this?
Yeah, thank you. We did this before, so he's actually doing a really good job with it. But yeah, and then maintenance windows. How long is your maintenance window? If it's a super long maintenance window compared to other companies, then maybe you can do more hosts in that time and shorten your overall cycle for upgrades. But you need to keep all this in consideration. The next is, what's your upgrade method? We'll be talking about those here in just a few minutes. There's a few different methods you can take. There's pros and cons to each of them. We have options. So essentially what we're trying to do is say, there's multiple different ways that you can do this. Pick the one that works best for you, right? Are you using DRS? Are you using host profiles? Host profiles help you with mass, configurations and being able to avoid configuration drift. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. And then, are your VMs on shared storage? Okay, that's going to increase how many hosts potentially that you can upgrade at a time, as opposed to doing local storage.
So I think the key thing to sort of, before we sort of move on, is like Brian said, you have options, right? I talk to customers who are upgrading like an island of 2 hosts, which are sitting in some remote office, and that's their environment, and that's fine. And I've also talked to customers who upgrade 10,000 or more hosts, and they have a completely different, approach to ESXi lifecycle, and they have different requirements, different constraints. So the key thing is plan it out, think what works best, and even if today you are doing one method, don't be locked into that method. There are better options that are available that you might be able to sort of transition to, and we're going to talk to some of that.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the upgrade process. What goes on when you upgrade ESX? All right. You kind of have down here in the bottom, we have a little image of kind of the partition layout of ESX. All right. So when you do a normal upgrade, let me take a step back here. How many people here actually do upgrades as opposed to fresh installs? Okay. That's great.
Everybody who does fresh install, this is an upgrade session, so I'm...
Yeah, I just want to make sure. I want to see, for our personal benefit as well. So how many of you do fresh installs? You just find it easier, faster to do? Okay, great. When we go through and we do these upgrades, all right, the steps that kind of go through here are, first, the upgrade process will save the configuration of your ESX host. Okay, it'll save that out. The second step, it'll bring in the new VIBs from the new version and overwrite the old. The host reboots. When it comes back up, that configuration is reapplied to that host, and you're good to go. Okay? So at no time during this upgrade was the VMFS data store touched. Okay? Everything took place over there in Bank 1. So as far as being worried about information that you have on your on the VMFS partition, you shouldn't have to worry about any of that being touched. It's all being taken care of in a different partition. Did you want to add into that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, at this point, every time we ask that question, install and upgrade, and I think both of them are okay. But the key thing to sort of walk away with is that the end state of an upgraded box is identical to the box when you have a fresh installed box. So it's not something that you should sort of fear. A lot of people tell me that when a major release comes out, that they just must do a fresh install because they don't want to sort of carry over bad state. We do a fairly good job of making sure that your settings are preserved and you get all the goodness of the new release, right? So I think with traditional operating system releases, people don't want to do upgrades across major versions. I understand that. With ESXi, you should feel much more confident that your VMFS and VMs are not going to get destroyed or trashed during upgrades, and also that you're going to end up in pretty much the same place. So you can save yourself some time by actually doing an upgrade versus a fresh install.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the different options we have, right? We're here for upgrades, and we told you have options. Let's list those, okay? The first option is to just go and use the ISO. This is your manual install or upgrade, right? You go, you log in, you boot, you attach the ISO, you go through the process, it's all manual, okay? That works. Does it work at scale? Not unless you have a lot of interns, right? Generally, that's not what we would recommend. The second one is Update Manager, okay? And as you can see here, it won't do a fresh install, but it covers things such as patches, upgrades. It uses the DRS integration, so you can work on rolling upgrades there. And we have optimized that for scale. And we can talk a little bit about that later on in this session as well. Your third option you have is AutoDeploy. How many of you here are using AutoDeploy? Got a couple. All right. How many of you here are using Update Manager for...
Okay.
Fantastic. All right. I'll come back to that. AutoDeploy is fantastic in the sense of doing these upgrades, and why we'll explain that here in the next couple slides. But really briefly, at a high-level view, you can do your installs, you can do your upgrades, you can do your patches. It supports rollback to some extent, and it's optimized at scale. And we'll talk about those here in the next slides. Scripted is another way. People will go out and script these. People will do Kickstart. There's a number of different ways that people will try and work this to do a scripted. It's install and upgrade. And then ESX CLI, you can go through and do upgrades and patches via ESX CLI as well. Where we really want to focus, where we think this will really help and benefit all of you, are these two, Update Manager and AutoDeploy. Okay. Do you want to add anything?
No, I think that's, I mean, it sort of boils down to all of these options are fully supported. Feel free to use whatever works in your environment. These two generally tend to be where we see most of our customers converging. We do see a lot of people using scripted for initial Kickstart-based installs, but not so much for upgrades because it's a little bit cumbersome. These two definitely stand out to be the more prominent options in our customer base. So we will focus on these two, but if you have questions about anything else, feel free to ask as well.
Yeah. And so we see people, especially jumping back at the AutoDeploy, we see customers with just a couple hosts using AutoDeploy. We see some of our customers with over 10,000 hosts using AutoDeploy. Obviously, when you get up to 10,000 hosts, well, anywhere maybe above 50 or 100, it becomes more difficult to do this all in a manual method. We see some of our largest customers that are always just pushing the latest and greatest and pushing to the edge are using AutoDeploy for those. So, Update Manager. I talked about rolling upgrades, right? In this scenario here, we have a mixed environment with hosts between 5.0, 5.1, and 5.5. Ideally, what you would do is invoke VUM to go through and start doing the updates on these hosts. What it'll do is it will evacuate the virtual machines from a host, okay, by using vMotion, push them off to the other host in the cluster. It'll then go ahead, update, install ESX. Once that powers back up, it's going to vMotion host back across to that, and it'll move on to the next host. And ideally, this is a very easy and hands-off method for upgrading your clusters. Okay? There are some caveats. There are some third-party vendors that have software that is tied to a virtual machine that's pegged to a host that you have to take into account sometimes. But overall, this method works pretty smoothly. And we'll go through with upgrades with no downtime. Okay? All right, so let's talk a little bit again about AutoDeploy and host profiles. This meets a few different criteria, a few different use cases, right? So as we look at bare metal hosts, you just barely get a host, you want to go, you want to deploy fast, you don't want to do a whole lot of manual work. AutoDeploy and host profiles is your friend, okay? My options there, AutoDeploy and host profiles fits that use case. Out-of-date hosts, so you're looking at your upgrades, AutoDeploy is also your friend there, okay, for the same reasons we talked about. It'll boot up a fresh image using AutoDeploy and the rules that you set, and it'll use the attached ESX image that you chose prior to doing these upgrades, and it will go ahead and boot that up. Misconfigured hosts, maybe not so much AutoDeploy here as it is host profiles. Both are still relevant, but as far as configuration drift across multiple hosts, if you are working with other coworkers and you're going through your process of setting up these hosts and configuring them, if you're doing it manually, you have the ability to accidentally put in the wrong values. Okay? You also have the ability or the potential for your coworkers to put in the wrong values. And it's sometimes hard to catch that, and you don't catch that right away, but it can lead to bigger issues in your data center. Whereas using host profiles, and along with AutoDeploy, you can go in and have mass configurations all set the same, and you don't have to worry about that configuration drift. Okay? And the last one, rollback. If you're using AutoDeploy with this, it's very easy to go in and change the rule from, let's say you push to 6.0 and you have maybe a driver that doesn't work, or for whatever reason you end up having to do an emergency rollback during your maintenance window. It's very easy to go in with AutoDeploy, change the rule and say, hey, point back to the last ESX ISO or version that I used and just restart that host, and it will come back up with the previous version. So it makes rolling back very easy. Okay? These are great. Like I said, zero touch. Once you get in there and you set up these rules, it just goes. Power on more hosts. They'll grab the rules, they'll grab the host profiles, and they're set. That's where this really comes in at scale. Okay? Do you have anything you want to add to that?
No.
Okay. So a little plug for our next session. If you want to know more about AutoDeploy and host profiles, we have a session at 5 o'clock today. It's INF5123, and we go much deeper into how to use AutoDeploy and host profiles at scale. Okay? All right, I'll let you take this.
Cool, thanks. So now we're going to talk about, we are moving to phase 3, right? So we've upgraded ESX hosts at this point. Now we're going to talk about what do we need to do beyond that. And a lot of people generally just end up upgrading ESX hosts and then they're done. There's nothing more to be done, but there is. And I'm going to start talking about VMware Tools, virtual hardware in just a second, what needs to be done there, how can it be optimized. But before I sort of jump right in, I wanted to take a second and walk through this workflow with you guys, because when I took over the PM ownership for VMware Tools, I was baffled by the number of ways we can do VMware Tools. Like every week I was learning a new thing that we could do with VMware Tools. So I made this slide to educate myself, and I'm going to just force it on you guys. So we have the VMware Tools team, and we obviously always have tools pre-installed on every ESX host. So you can get tools from the host. Your VMs can get the tools ISOs from the host. A lot of people do not like this model as well, because they like to keep their ESXi images very, very small. So they rip out the tools using Image Builder and keep tools on a shared repository somewhere in their data center. The other version of tools which are available for Linux is like we have downloadable tools, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. But OSP packages, and they've been around for a while. It's available on a website, available for most Linux distributions. You can curl, wget, whatever, and a highly automatable approach to get tools updated in a Linux environment. And we're going to talk about downloadable tools a little bit further down the slides. And this is essentially the future of tools in going forward, or at least on the Linux side. And what this is few years back, we started upstreaming all of our tools, the kernel drivers, some of the user space components into the Linux kernel mainline. And we did get acceptance, and now Tools is sort of available in all of the distributions by default. So if you install Red Hat 7 right now, or 7.1 or 7.2, whenever 7.3, 7.4, VMware Tools is going to come pre-baked in it. And every time you update your Linux distributions, Tools gets updated because Red Hat is going to pick up the latest Open VMware Tools from our open source repository and package it in your distributions. Same with SLES, same with Ubuntu, CoreOS, and our very own Photon OS as well. So this essentially gets you out of the tools lifecycle management business. You don't really have to worry about, are my tools updated? Because as you patch your operating systems, your tools gets updated right with it. A lot of people ask me, can we do the same thing for Windows? Our friends in Redmond do not want to play nice on that one yet, but we are looking at ways to sort of improve Windows side of tools patching as well.
And I'll just add in there as well. So I've done a few blog posts on these lately on the vSphere VMware blog, and I've had a number of good comments come back that I just wanted to share with you a few things just to make sure that we're all clarified here. So Open VM Tools, even though we've upstreamed that in the communities, that's still being run by us. That is still done by us. We're not passing that off to other people to take care of and say, hey, you guys go do this on your own, right? So that's still being managed by the VMware Tools team. We're just making it much easier for our, the customers to be able to get these inside of their operating systems. The other thing that I wanted to, oh, no, that's fine. I'll let you keep going.
Okay, cool. And we're going to talk a little bit about VM compatibility upgrade, and this is what you think of as virtual hardware upgrades, and I think at somewhere in 5.1 or 5.5 we started calling it VM compatibility. And then you can, it's available in NGC UI or the web client UI, and it's a fairly seamless upgrade. You should remember though that this is sort of an you cannot go back. Out of all the other things that you can upgrade, downgrade, backup, restore, virtual hardware is not something that you can sort of go back. So you should definitely do it when you have a requirement or when you are using new features. But once you go to, let's say, version 11, you can't go back to version 7, right? So this is something to definitely keep in mind. Yeah, I just already talked about it. And of course, this can also be upgraded using VUM. So VUM is a tool not only just for ESXi lifecycle management, but it also updates VMware Tools. A lot of people sometimes don't know that. It also updates virtual hardware, and it also updates appliances. So take a look at that if you haven't. And with this, I wanted to come back to tools and talk a little bit about it. So we spend a lot of time making sure that we have an extended support matrix for VMware Tools. And what this essentially tells you is that tools from really old hosts, let's say vSphere 5 or even 4, can run on an ESXi 6 box. And tools from ESXi 6 can run on a really old box as well. So we have both backwards and forward compatibility. And we sort of do this because we want to sort of minimize the work that you guys have to do in your environment. And tools upgrade is not everybody's favorite job. There are like thousands and thousands of VMs, and sometimes you are not the VM or the app owner, and it's hard to get downtime. So we try to make sure that you don't have to do it as much as possible. And of course, there is a mapping to VM compatibility as well. So I'll go through this one as well. So yeah, so people ask me, is tools upgrade recommended, and do I absolutely have to do it every time I upgrade ESX? And the answer is yes, it's recommended, because we do put feature fixes in, we do put security fixes, we do put performance fixes, but it is absolutely required and will support stuff not pick up your phone unless you have upgraded VMware Tools? No. So, I mean, you can plan this out. We do have a very long supported matrix, but don't be on the really, really last version, because when I eventually make the decision, very difficult decision of dropping one of those old versions, it suddenly is a lot of VMs that you have to go update, and you don't want to be so far behind that it becomes a nightmare scenario. So the other question people ask me is, okay, so I need to upgrade VMware Tools, and how do I decide when do I do it? And for a long time I used to say, because I said so, you have to upgrade VMware Tools. And people said, no, I will never do that. And for that, we are now coming out with release notes for VMware Tools so that you know what was fixed in VMware Tools, what were the security fixes that went in, what were the feature fixes that went in. And that allows you to sort of plan your tools upgrade. Maybe you want to skip a version. Maybe that's a feature or a fix that you've been waiting for, and it gives you better visibility into why to upgrade and when to upgrade. Use OpenVM tools wherever possible. So we definitely have this for RHEL 7 and up, and most other newer distributions as well. We are working with almost all of the Linux side operating system vendors to make sure that we can backport this to some of the in-flight older distributions, because we understand that there are a lot of people who are still running RHEL 4, RHEL 5 even. So we may not go all the way back, but we are definitely considering RHEL 6. It's available today. I did talk about the long support matrix we have. One of the things that I find useful to sort of share with customers is you can skip versions, right? Because of the support matrix that we have, if you're going to, let's say, vSphere 5.5 or vSphere 6, just go to the latest tools. It works with a lot of older versions, and so you're saving yourself future time, right? So think about it when you sort of plan your upgrade environment. And hardware version compatibility. Like I said, it is you can't go back, and when you are actually upgrading the hardware version, make sure you have upgraded VMware Tools first. This is not a best practice. It is the way to do it. Please do not upgrade virtual hardware before upgrading VMware Tools. Sometimes that leads to bad scenarios. And with that, these were the slides that we were adding before the session came on.
We were being pretty frantic getting this in.
Pretty frantic getting this in last minute. I'm just going to announce VMware Tools 10.0. We released it sometime last month. What this essentially does is that VMware Tools now can ship outside of vSphere releases. So it does not mean that you're suddenly going to have an explosion in the version of VMware Tools, and you're going to go on like some vicious cycle to just release VMware Tools, because we can. This means that we can get you higher priority security fixes and some certain select feature sets out to you sooner. It also means that we can do things like this. We can give you better release notes. But the true value is we can deliver features to you, and you can keep a consistent tools version for your entire inventory. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the later sections. Okay, VMFS upgrade. So do you want to talk about this?
You can.
Okay, cool. So for VMFS upgrade, so now we are moving firmly to like phase 4. And people ask me like, okay, I've upgraded ESX, I've upgraded my vCenter, I've upgraded my virtual hardware and VMware Tools, I'm done. No, you're not. You still have to make sure you're running the latest VMFS version, because it does give you certain key benefits. Do not forget about that. Is anybody out there still running VMFS 3?
Couple.
Okay. I see one hand back there, and maybe another couple. But I think you should upgrade as soon as possible, because we are going to be announcing a new version with some new release that may or may not happen. But you should upgrade, because it's going to make your life much simpler, and the newer feature set might not support an upgrade path from VMFS 3. And it's a one-click upgrade, no VM downtime, nothing. But there are some caveats, right? There is a difference between an upgraded VMFS 3 and there is an, upgraded VMFS 5 volume and a newly installed VMFS 5 volume. The key difference, which almost I mean, it does not matter to a lot of customers, but I think which it comes down to is the block size. So if block size matters to you, create a new VMFS volume and move your VMs over, and then you can trash the old volume. The key thing to remember, if you have a shared LUN, upgrade all of your hosts to a point where they can sort of see the VMFS 5 volume. Do not upgrade to VMFS 5 before all of your hosts are upgraded, because otherwise you're going to sort of lose visibility to that shared LUN. Oh, I didn't say that. Again, with just like virtual hardware, there is no undo operation, so plan for this. And like I said, make sure all of the hosts that are trying to see a particular shared volume can have been already upgraded. To benefit from the latest VMFS 5 features, do a storage vMotion, create a new volume, but please do it in a non-peak hours. Do not try to do this on a 64 TB LUN all at once you're running heavy I/O. It is not fun. That is absolutely not fun.
Alrighty. Can I?
Yeah,
sure. Right.
Yeah, sure.
All right. So Salil talked about the storage side of these things. One of the things that a lot of people forget about is your distributed switch. If you're using a distributed switch, usually it just runs. You just add new port groups as things grow or as you have other use cases, but a lot of times people forget to go in and change that version, right? Upgrading your distributed switch is super simple. Okay, you right-click on the switch and you go to Upgrade Distributed Switch. In this instance, we already did it, so it's grayed out. And it's one click, you go through, and it'll upgrade for you. Okay. So, really quickly, to go back through, like I said at the beginning, we want to go through and do a holistic view of these things, right? It's not just the vCenter, it's not just the hosts, right? There's a slew of other things that you have to take into consideration to do this well and to do it smoothly. So as you do it, think about VMware Tools, virtual hardware, your VMFS files, your virtual distributed switches. All this stuff will play into account for when you're doing your upgrades. Order is very important. Okay, like we talked about, vCenter first, ESX hosts. When you're doing your VMs, do VMware Tools before you do virtual hardware. Okay, all this is important. Like Sula said as well, please read the documentation. Okay, I know that we're all the cat on the unicorn with the pistol, and when we go in here and we think that we can do all this, until we actually make a mistake and we realize that if we'd read part of the documentation, we could have avoided that. So please take a look at that. And obviously don't forget about all the additional pieces there. Before we jump into this, I want to go back and briefly touch on VMware Tools a little bit more, okay, to expand on what Salil said. So all of us know, how many of you have seen the dreaded Tools is out of date icon somewhere in your environment?
Wow.
Right? Yeah. Okay. So a little brief background on how that works, right, and why it's this way. Each version of ESX has VMware Tools on that host, right? That's about half of the size of your ESX ISO. If you have a mixed environment and you upgrade one host from, say, 5.0 to 5.5, the tools on that host are going to be different. If you upgrade a virtual machine on that host, vSphere will say that it's up to date. But if you vMotion that virtual machine to a different host that's on a different version, it's going to show up as out of date because it's referring to the tools that's on that host. So as you go through, you might see this, and it might be driving you nuts. You need to understand that it's going by that version that's sitting. It's going by the version that is sitting on that ESX host. And there's a way around that, including, as we were talking about the new version of Tools 10. There's a very simple way that you can get around this. And it's by using what's called the product locker. I'm sorry I don't have a slide for this right now. But it's a way that you can use a shared data store, and you can go in and change the setting on each of the ESX hosts in the user vars to say, point to the tools that I have sitting on this shared storage. And what that will do is for every single host that can see that shared storage and you change the setting for, it will go and point to one location with one set of VMware tools. So no longer do you have to update the tools on every single one of your hosts. You can update the setting and you have one location where you do that. And if you change it, it doesn't matter if you vMotion a virtual machine from one host to another, because it points back to this location and they all say that they're up to date. Does that sound better, everyone, than doing it manually? Okay, yeah. So take that into consideration as you go along and you're doing your VM Tools upgrades. All right, you're the PM. I'll let you talk about what's next.
Stuff that may or may not happen.
Stuff that may or may not happen.
Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about where does ESXi lifecycle and where does our product lifecycle go a little bit. So as I talk to customers a lot every week, when I started planning the roadmap for the next release, we were looking for customer feedback. I didn't have to go very far, so I just went to Twitter, and the feedback was abundant. So I'm going to save you the pain of reading all that, and I'm going to just summarize it. So ESXi upgrades take too long, right? I think just vMotioning and putting the entire cluster into maintenance mode is a pain. Can we do something better there? Why is VUM still not in the web client, right? This slide was made at San Francisco. VUM is a Windows-only application. It's 2015. Don't tell me that I need to move to the appliance. If you're going to keep VUM on Windows, it's almost not worth my time. So I'm going to first start by addressing the pain point number one. ESXi upgrades take too long. So we started having conversation with this particular customer who was taking almost to the order of 2.5 hours to put a single host into maintenance mode, and that was just because they were blowing past all of our limits. But it was still a problem to have because they had some like 13,000 VMs per cluster or something like that, and they're not even on 6.
Don't do that. Please don't do that.
Please don't do that. Please don't do that. But if you do that, and you're obviously going to run into some painful scenarios, and hosts are just going to take too long to be put into maintenance mode. So we looked at their environment. We looked at what we could improve. We went back. We made some improvements on the algorithm, and this is the result. It's obviously your mileage might vary. It sort of depends on how loaded your cluster is, what's the ratio of powered on to powered off VMs in your environment. So your results might vary, but there's definitely a lot of improvements that we made in host evacuation times, and they are available in 6.0U1, and we have backported some of that to 5.5U3 as well. So you should almost transparently benefit from this improvement. And again, this is not just for ESXi upgrades. People put hosts into maintenance mode for a variety of reasons, and this will just be beneficial for that as well. So we have obviously reduced a lot of the time. So in the last test that I did before coming to VMworld, in a sample environment, if an operation was taking 47 minutes, before these changes, it's taking 2 minutes after these changes. So we've made some improvements there. Hopefully you guys enjoy this feature and can do more ESXi upgrades in that short maintenance window that you do have. The next one, I do not know how many people are already aware of this, but in 6.0U1, VUM is now fully integrated in the web client, so no more switching between the FAT client and the web client. All functionality, it's a fully featured VUM set, feature set available in the web client. So please go ahead and try it and give us some feedback. The team has done a fantastic job there. Let us know what's working, what's not working, and what's missing. Yeah, also there's a demo at the operations booth. So VUM today, right? So I think today VUM is a Windows-only application. We generally recommend having a separate SQL database or Oracle database, keeping it separately from VC. You have to install it separately. It's a separate ISO. You have to do a bunch of things, which just adds to the overhead. It adds to your licensing costs. It adds to your frustration, right? And we definitely wanted to do something to sort of mitigate that. So with the next release, and we are sort of announcing this in tech preview, VUM will come embedded.
May or may not.
May or may not. Come embedded with the VC appliance. So it's going to come fully integrated with it. No separate database requirements, no separate install requirements. It's going to work at full scale, so don't worry about your VC choking because now I've stuffed VUM in there and how is it going to work. We are going to release a full set of performance white papers and full description at a scale environment with this model, if it does happen. This should really help move things along for those of you who are looking to sort of move to the appliance. How many of you will consider the appliance once we sort of do something like this? Impressive. Awesome. Thank you. So, Ryan, do you want to take it?
Yeah, great. So just some technical resources that we can go over, right? So, as always, we have the vSphere upgrade notes in the upgrade center. So what's going to be important to you? We know that the VMware site can seem like a black hole sometimes if you don't know where you need to go. There's a lot of information there and it can be overwhelming. It's all great information, but sometimes to get to what you need to quickly, it can be a little difficult. We've added a short link up there for vmware.com/go/vSphere-upgrade. So this will take you right up to the upgrade page where you can see some white papers, some technical documentation, all that information you can find very quickly and easily there. We have a walkthrough. So we have product walkthroughs. This isn't just for upgrades. We have this for other products and other features throughout VMware. But we also have the short link here, the go/vSphere-upgrade walkthrough. And this will actually let you see step by step what it would be like to do these upgrades. So, of course, we still recommend that you try this in your stage environment before going to production, but it gives you the ability to go in and see what it should look like, okay? How it should be for you guys without it actually impacting your environment. Another set of resources we have, the Compatibility Guide and the Interoperability Guide. These are fantastic, especially when you're looking at VMware Tools. You can go and see which versions VMware Tools will work with. When you're hardware, obviously, when you're looking at the compatibility guide for your versions of vSphere, definitely take a look at these two places. It's a treasure trove of knowledge. And in closing, we really want to say there's never been a better time to do these upgrades. vCenter Server Appliance is to a point where it's in feature parity and configuration maximum parity with the Windows vCenter. Okay? We're seeing a lot of the things that Salil was talking about with faster evacuation times. The ability to have VMware tools from older or newer releases tied in and shared across your entire environment. All these things pulling together to help you do a better and smoother ESXi lifecycle transition. Okay? Definitely look at VCSA. Definitely look at it even more when the update manager is a part of it, if it is a part of it. And there you have options. If there's one thing that we want you to know as you leave this place, you have many different options. We know that one size doesn't fit all. We have some customers that have 2 hosts or 3 hosts, and we have others that have 10,000. It's not going to be the same process for each of you, right? So know that you have options. Know that you can go in and try different ones. Update Manager and AutoDeploy and Host Profiles are the 2 that we do recommend, especially for doing it at scale. And we would love to chat and get feedback with you. We'd love to hear your stories. We'd love to hear your pain points because it's you guys that help us know what we need to do next. It's you guys that are actually working with our products. It's you that are sweating about things and staying up all night trying to fix problems or issues in your environment. We want to hear about that so we can come back and help you with that as well. Anything else?
No, I think that was well summarized.
All right.
But thank you guys. I think that was all we had for today, but we are going to take questions now, if people have questions.
Yeah, any questions? We have a few mics, so if you have a question, please raise your hand and stand up. We'll have a few mic runners bring around the mics really fast. Right here.
Hello. We're thinking of moving away from the Windows vCenter over to the VCSA. Mm-hmm. So the only thing we might have issues will be the VDS configuration. Can it be backed up and restored on the VCSA to migrate my ESX hosts?
So I think there is going to be, so whenever, how do I say this?
So possibly...
It may not happen.
So yeah, possibly, it may or may not happen that we might give you a way to move to the future version of the appliance.
Like it would be to avoid downtime, right?
So let's just say we do have right now a fling that is a very small use case for transferring from one vCenter to another. Okay, a VMware fling is something that's not supported. We're trying it out. We're trying to get feedback, and we're looking at maybe if it goes that far, having it turn into part of the product or not. We have one that's out there that we're testing. And that's about all I can tell you right now, okay? But know that we do know that that's an issue, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. There was someone over here, I think.
I think that's back there.
Okay.
There's one major pain point that our organization experiences, and it's called Flash. Can you explain anything about it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I don't want to. So obviously, we have heard the feedback loud and clear about Flash. I think it's noted. All I can say is that there are efforts underway to sort of probably move away from Flash or make sure that you do not run into those problems at your organization. But at this point, I also want to plug for something called as the host client.
Embedded
So
host.
there is an embedded host client Fling, which is written in HTML5. I do not know if you have tried it. I encourage you guys to. It's been receiving a lot of good feedback. The team is working very fast, the team that is behind it, and they're releasing newer and newer iterations of it. And if that is any indicator, you can be rest assured that we are looking at transitioning to HTML5.
So just to add on to that, it's another VMware Fling called the ESXi Embedded Host Client. It's HTML5, and you'll notice with the announcements in San Francisco as well as here, a lot of our pages for different products are coming out in HTML5. Okay, you're seeing that already with certain products. The embedded host client is another way for us to get feedback from you as far as how it works. We're able to see performance and how you guys like that. So definitely look at doing that. And on my blog, I have a little PowerShell script or PowerCLI script that will let you take that and deploy it to all your hosts. So all of a sudden, it takes 30 seconds or so, and all you have to do is then type in the IP address of your host, and you've got an HTML5. It's a smaller version of the C# client. It doesn't have nearly all of the functionality, but it shows you, and I hope you can take that and maybe extrapolate what we're trying to do from that.
Or you can use VUM to just push the web onto all of your hosts.
Or you can use VUM, yeah. Any last questions? We got a guy right here.
We're thinking of upgrading from 5.1 to 6. Do we have to pass by 5.5 first, or can we upgrade directly?
No, you can upgrade directly. We do support multi-step upgrades, obviously, like a lot of our customers hit every version, so we test that. It's fully supported, but we also support direct upgrades. So to vSphere 6, it supports direct upgrades from all the way from vSphere 5.0 or 5.1 or 5.5 or any of the update releases as well. So,
Do we have one last question? Did you have a question there? Yeah, last question.
Hi. Oh, sorry. Can you use custom images in the upgrade manager to upgrade your environment?
Yes. So
Okay.
we do. I work a lot with the OEMs. Our partners, and a lot of our OEMs release custom images as well, and those are fully supported in the update manager
Great.
as well. You can add. You can either do that, or you can take the OEM patch content, add the partner depot, and just directly apply that content as well.
Okay.
Everyone, thank you so much for coming and attending our session. We hope you have a good rest of your VMworld.